All right. Do I get the high sign from Rob? Am I ready to go? Welcome, everyone. And I wish there was more everyone, but we have a nice set of people in the online audience, and we have few people in person. We will have 4 speakers tonight. We have a great program lined up, and hopefully you will get your money's worth for coming to this meeting. Glad to see some familiar faces. I don't want to say old faces, and some newer faces. That's also good. And we have a person going for their qualifying speech. A little bit of a preface. I want to talk to you a little bit about next month. Next month, I'm going to be very insistent upon people coming in person. And the reason for that is we have our theme for July, because it's 2 days before the 4th of July and the freedom of expression concept in the Constitution and the 4th of July. So to commemorate that, we're having a suggestion that Michael and Osher and I came together with: soapbox speeches. Have anybody ever heard of the old concept of going into the public park and standing on a soapbox and espousing some maybe controversial position that you have for 2 to 4 minutes and say what you will? I guess I should warn everybody, though, it may be recorded and put on YouTube, so you want to be maybe a little cautious. You may never get a job again if you say the wrong thing, but we don't want anyone getting canceled. We hope no one will punch anybody. But my debate club is going on for 20 minutes, 20 years, 20 minutes, 20 years, and that never happened. So we're hopefully we'll still be comfortable in our different opinions. An extra added attraction to that is that's debatable. He's kind of sponsoring the concept because it's a commemoration to freedom of speech and the 4th of July. And so we will have 4, possibly 6, as we do, and that's debatable. We have a topic, usually of some controversy, and it's usually a topic of the day, like should Supreme Court justices have a number of years they can serve, and should tariffs be replacing income taxes, whatever it is. And sometimes there's silly topics like California should have nude beaches, or one year we did in the summer, the White House should be a different color. It's been white all these years. Isn't it about time it was a different color? And at Christmas, we do more fun things too, like should Santa Claus wear a belt instead of suspenders, or should you open presents the night before, the next day, some of those things. But normally they're more serious topics. And so we will have them come in. This is what will be fun for the audience. And so you really want to be in the audience for this, because the audience and the audience only I will allow to choose what these speakers will debate. They're going to come in and give the audience about 5 choices. The audience just chooses, yes, I want you to speak on the bullet train, and I want one person to speak in favor and one person to speak against, and they'll get 5 minutes and 5 minutes only. And just like in club, we mute them after 5 minutes so they don't get any more words in. I haven't decided yet whether we'll have a vote from the audience, a show of hands as to who won the debate, but we'll see about that. But we have at least 4. And of course, one of those highlights will be Dr. Michael Alexander is going to debate Michael Osher. So that should be something for up to us to look forward to, see whether they come out swinging or how they handle that debate. And we always have a lot of fun. It is, as I have said on many occasions, my favorite Toastmastering experience is the debate club. And we don't do it quite so impromptu as that, because we usually know the topic a month in advance. So we know the topic, we don't know what side we're on. Well, in this case, they won't even know what topic they're debating. They'll know it's one of these 5 topics, and they won't know what side it is because the audience will make that decision. Okay, we are, looks like we're about ready to go. We have a few people in the room, and we have a few people online. And so we will start with a speech I just heard at Fantastic Communicators. And one of our qualified speakers gave this speech, and I was so impressed, and I thought it fit right in with Memorial Day, because the title of his speech is The Tale of Two Heroes. The Tale of Two Heroes. And speaker number 1, Roger Bowman. Roger, take it away.
Thank you, Tom. Well, this is kind of splitting the difference now between Memorial Day and Father's Day. You'll see. Tonight, I'm going to tell you two stories of two heroes, one of combat and one of crime. Both are true. The first story I'm going to tell you is the one of crime. It begins in the 1920s in the city of Chicago. It was the time of gangsters, and one man stood above them all, Al Capone. He was the king of crime. He smuggled alcohol, he ran rackets, and he silenced rivals. He was brutal, very feared, and untouchable. Why untouchable? Because of one man, his lawyer, a man named Easy Eddie. On the outside, Easy Eddie was a nice family man. But Easy Eddie had discovered that he had a gift. He had a natural instinct for manipulating people, which he used for evil. He protected Al Capone ruthlessly. He bribed cops, he bribed judges, and he bribed witnesses. And when the bribes didn't work, he ensured violence would follow. Now, these weren't idle threats. Let me give you an example. One time, Al Capone beat a man to death with a baseball bat. Bam! Right in the middle of a crowded restaurant. Not one witness would testify. Zero. That was Easy Eddie's work. His job was to silence people. And Al Capone rewarded Eddie. Eddie lived a lavish lifestyle, including the use of an entire city block gifted to him by Al Capone. But Easy Eddie was a conflicted man. You see, the family man that Easy Eddie was on the outside had a problem. As his son grew older, well, his son asked him the same questions, well, all sons ask their fathers. Dad, what do you do for work? And Easy Eddie's standard answer of being a lawyer, the noble protector of the innocent, that was becoming harder and harder for Easy Eddie to say. He knew he could never tell his son the truth, that he protected a greedy psychopath from the repercussions of that psychopath's violence. But inside, he knew that was the truth. And as he watched his son blossom, he felt he could not live that lie. He had to set a better example for his son. So Easy Eddie turned state's evidence. Yep, he went to the police. He helped the authorities convict Al Capone, despite the danger to himself. And as a result, Al Capone went to Alcatraz, and Easy Eddie went on a hit list. And Easy Eddie knew it. He was under no illusion. Bringing down the boss of a lucrative empire meant he would have to be killed. And soon after, he was killed. Easy Eddie was machine gunned to death while driving his car. Easy Eddie had knowingly sacrificed his life to set a better example for his son. Inside Easy Eddie's pocket, police found a note to his son, and it read, "The clock of life is wound but once, and no man has the power to tell just when the hands will stop. At a late or early hour, now is the only time you own. So live and love and toil with will. Place no faith in time, for the clock may soon be still." My second story is one of combat. It takes place at the beginning of World War II in the Pacific Ocean, less than 2 months after the Pearl Harbor attack. A squadron of fighter pilots aboard the aircraft carrier USS Lexington was launched to intercept a group of Japanese bombers that were heading towards the carrier. Now, during the flight out, one of the pilots, a pilot named Butch, noticed that his fuel tank had not been fully filled. It hadn't been topped off, and he didn't have enough fuel to reach the intercept point, fight the Japanese, and return. So Butch notified his commander, and the squadron commander told Butch, "Turn around, go back to Lexington." And that wasn't terribly uncommon. So that's what Bush did. He peeled off and was flying back alone back towards Lexington. When on that trip, he ran across 8 new Japanese bombers. These were bombers that were far closer to the Lexington. He knew these bombers would be over the Lexington before any new fighters could be scrambled. The realization immediately sank in. Outnumbered 8-1, he could run or he could fight. Butch chose to fight. Now, Butch's aircraft happened to be one of the few fighters that had cameras mounted in the wings along with the guns. So everything that I'm saying happened was borne out on film. One at a time, Butch went in, twisted, turned, attacked, downing 4 of the bombers, and then he ran out of ammunition. With 4 more bombers ready to pounce, he knew the Lexington was in danger. He flew straight into another bomber and used his wing to shear off the tail of that other Japanese bomber, sending it into the ocean. Now, each of these bombers had defensive machine guns of their own, and they had by now sprayed innumerable bullets into Butch's fighters, just boom. But amazingly, it still flew. And the 3 remaining bombers, having used up their fuel zigging and dodging Butch, had to turn for home. Butch limped his damaged aircraft back to the Lexington, where he crash landed. But he was okay. He had saved himself, he had saved the carrier, and he had saved the 3,000 men aboard the carrier. Butch had become the first ace of the Pacific Theater and the first naval aviator to receive a Medal of Honor. The people of his hometown in Chicago named their international airport after Butch. You may have heard of this airport. It's called the Chicago O'Hare Airport. I'll conclude with this thought. I think you'd agree, Butch O'Hare is the type of man every father would want his son to become. I think it's the type of man Easy Eddie had hoped his son would become. And he did. Butch O'Hare was Easy Eddie's son.
Wow. Now you know why I insisted on him telling that story to open this meeting. Wonderful, wonderful speech. And I never knew any of that history. And I came from Chicago and very familiar with O'Hare Airport. Okay. Now we come to the meat of the program in terms of our qualifying speaker. And that is important, why I twisted so many qualified speakers into making sure they made it here to hear this particular speech and make their decision about how well they think he did. I'm not going to say a whole lot about an introduction to Al Batinga's qualifying speech, except to say that he has spoken to this organization on other occasions. In fact, he went all the way to number 2 this year in the International Speech Contest for District 12. And a year ago, he was at the International Convention seeking the opportunity to be able to go on the stage and didn't make it, but he got further than I ever got. So that's a statement right there. Our speaker tonight, candidate for qualifying speech, looking for your vote. Not working. Well, I don't know about that. I'm going to hold off then. If you're working on details, okay. And is this where the director on the side tells me to stretch this out a little bit and make sure it lasts a little longer? We're doing it with technical difficulties here, but we will get her taken care of. The next part of the program after that will be Natalie Thomas be introduced by Michael Osher, and our final speaker, Brian, will be introduced by Dominique, another qualified speaker in Brian and a qualified speaker in Dominique, who just happen to know each other fairly well. This one. Yeah. I see we have a couple of our newer QSs online. That's good. See, Ralph is there and Sarah. This might be an opportunity, Sarah. We often ask someone representing the district to make sure they make an announcement about something that's important. Sarah, are you available to speak on the part of the district for those in the audience? I know there's some important things coming up toward the end of the month as far as officer training.
Yes, thank you so much, Tom. We do have our officer training, our TLI or Toastmasters Leadership Institute, happening on June 21st. So if everyone is welcome. It's not just going to be our officer training, but many, many other trainings and fun things happening as well. And don't mind me, I just ran upstairs because I heard Tom say my name. Whew. All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, I know they're planning on it being a fun experience, not just an educational experience. So that should be good. You got to hear a little bit of the planning. Are we still planning on one of the things I think I heard the thoughts of, if an entire club wants to send all of their officers and pay for it, is that price a special price?
We were discussing incentives for that, not so much a special price for this, but an incentive coming your way at our next.
Okay, so we'll hear about that detail. Okay.
Presentation. Is it here? No. So it's behind it. So I gotta get rid of this right here. It's in your view, slideshow. I'm beginning. There you go. Okay, just test your thing.
So that we
Yes.
have so much silence. I'm going to also mention that we're going to be adding in some really fun electives. So if you looked at the flyer at all, we will have our evaluation elective, some other great things about fun for the meetings and ways to have some more fun with table topics. So going to have some fun electives as well at our next TLI. I don't know how much longer I need to talk to fill up the silence. But lots of things coming. If you are interested, please check out the district news and events that is published by Frankie every single Tuesday. Thank you.
I want to make sure I kind of keep my finger on the pulse a little bit of how many clubs are distinguished and what they have to do. Let you know, if you're not aware, that if you need to get your officers listed in, because that's one of the goals in terms of getting toward distinguished. Make sure you get your officers in before the end of the month. And if need be, if something comes up and you need to change an officer later on, that's okay, but you've still gotten credit for getting your officers list in on time. And you want to do that. And then you, of course, want to get your officers trained. That's another part of that goal.
You like to announce that Dominique will be presenting a training on evaluations at the TLI.
Oh,
So if you
okay.
want to know how to win,
Well, why don't we let
evaluation.
her talk about that? We have Dominique in our audience, and she's part of the program. So I'm going to let her. Yes, multiple times. Yes.
Okay.
All right, go ahead. I'm going to teach you how to do good evaluations. The most important quality of a good club.
Okay, I'm almost on camera. Okay, that's good. All right. Good evening, everybody. I wanted to mention that on June 21st for our TLI program, I will be presenting a well over an hour long workshop on evaluations from beginning to advanced. I'm going to give away all my tricks. So bring your notes. It's going to be interactive and fun, and you're going to come away with knowledge that you can use right away in your very next Toastmasters meeting.
Dominique, hold on, Dominique. Haven't you been the district champion in evaluation before? Did I forget that?
Two-time district evaluation champion, if you must know, Michael.
So listen to Dominique. She's got it.
Evaluation is the most important quality of a good club. I get a lot of phone calls, people looking for clubs and making suggestions to them about which club they should attend. And I tell them, visit a number of clubs, join the club that has the best evaluators. Don't join the club that has the best speakers, because you'll learn from the evaluators and you'll observe the best speakers, and that's nice. But if you want to get better, find the club with the best evaluators. But everybody can't join Dominique's club. It's not allowed.
Yes, they can. Everyone can join Dominique's club if they so choose. I'm sure Dominique's club would be okay with that, right, Dominique?
Yes, 2488 will take you.
I need to go backwards.
Maybe Natalie can give her speech.
Yeah, almost there. Or should I?
How about this?
Change speakers. Okay.
I have this here. I mean, we can go here. Okay, how about that? Is that? Yeah. Okay, let's go with that. Let's run with that. This should. Yeah, I'll come up here and do it.
I forgot I don't think I mentioned the other nice thing I was going to say about Al, that he is qualified to be a qualified speaker in District 100. So, all right, we're ready to go. Here we go. Al Batinga. And what do you do with failure? Right?
Yes.
I think I got that right.
Awesome.
Defeat. Hmm.
Testing, good. Let me introduce you to a 5-year-old boy. At 5 years old, his dad died. He had 2 younger siblings. And so by the time he was 10 at 6th grade, he had to drop out of school so he could fend for the family. And he started taking up odd jobs just to help. So without a dad, 2 younger siblings, and a very industrious mom who worked and worked and worked, he took up the mantle of the man of the house, and he started experimenting with jobs. And he took jobs as an insurance sales guy, believe it or not, when he was very young. He started selling tires. He even went into the military at 16, faked his birth certificate, and they found out 4 months later and kicked him out. So he went through a myriad of all kinds of jobs, all kinds of things, and failure after failure after failure, making some money, helping out the family, but he continued his failure. Now, about 40 years old, so you're fast forwarding a big group of years, he found his calling. And it was to go to a gas station in Corbin, Kentucky. And then in the back of the gas station, he started a little kitchen. And he started feeding hungry travelers. And all of a sudden it blossomed. And he says, this is it. Out of all the things I've done, this is it. So he ventured out and he started a restaurant with his idea. And you can probably guess who I'm talking about. It's the chicken guy, Colonel Sanders, at 40 years old, started this. And within a few years, he started flourishing and things were going well. Unfortunately, they built this thing called a freeway, and it bypassed Corbin. And he lost the business because no more traffic were stopping by because they bypassed his little city of Corbin. So now by this time, he's 65 years old. And some people were saying, you know, just give it up. You're 65, you're living off of Social Security, $100 a month. Just go with that. And he said, no, there's something more I need to do. And so he got out there and he got his pressure cooker and he got the bag of spices and he got into his car and he waved goodbye to his family. He had 2 grown children. And he says, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to figure out a way to make this happen. So he went to one person and he knocked and he said, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Restaurateur, here's what I want to do with you. I just want to cook up some chicken. You bring me the chicken. I'm going to cook it up. I'm going to give you the best recipe you've ever had. Best chicken in the west of the Mississippi. And all I'm going to do is take a few pennies off of what we can sell together. And the first person said, huh? Never heard of that. No. Next person, no, 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 no. 100 no's, 200 no's, 500 no's. And I often wonder about this time, Al, would you have stayed with it if you believed in this idea, all of us, if we had believed in a particular idea? After 500 no's, would we have stayed with it? Colonel Sanders did. 600, 700, 1,009 no's. Can you imagine that? Living in his car, pressure cooker, spices, going from restaurant to restaurant to restaurant, finding rejection throughout. Speakers Bureau, Toastmasters, honored guests. I want to entertain looking at failure in a totally different way. There's 3 things that Colonel Sanders does, and several of the other people I'm going to talk about does too. Number 1, they look at failure in a different way. They actually understand that success is built on failure. Success is built on failure. It's a necessity. And Colonel Sanders actually has said, every no, can you imagine that? 1,009 no's brought me closer to a yes. Phenomenal, instructive thought. And he said, a no is just a stepping stone toward yes. So he accepted failure. Number 2, he embraced failure. It was like he looked at it and said, this is part and parcel of what I need to do. And he embraced failure. So not only did he accept it and say, okay, I'm going to get some failures, he embraced it. He looked after it. He looked for the failures. And then number 3, they use it as a learning tool. Every failure helps you. You learn much, much more from failure than you do from success. And so Colonel Sanders, at about 72 years old, 72 years young, sold his franchise idea to an organization that bought it. And until he was almost 90 years old, he was the brand ambassador. He traveled 250 days a year at 88, representing Colonel Sanders. So I want to explore with you, when's your last gut-wrenching failure? When did that happen? When was your last failure where you looked at it, it took the wind out of you, it took the sails out of you, you sat back and you said, wow. When was your last failure? And I want to challenge you because failure is actually good. And if we can change our mindset overall, we can learn so much. So if you think about, how about that speech you wanted to give that you didn't give? How about that office that you wanted to run for? How about that person that was in the audience that you got to know, but you wanted to have some coffee with, but you never went after it simply because you were afraid? I was afraid of failure. So failure comes in many, many ways, and I'll define that. Failure is simple, not meeting a goal. So if I say I'm going to lose 5 pounds this month and I lose 4, I failed. Now, I know you and I can argue about it, and you can talk about semantics, and you can talk about never using the word failure. I heard all that, studied all of that. I understand it. To look at failure in a good, positive way is helpful and supportive. But for us, just for the few minutes I'm here, I want to do black and white, off and on, 1 or a 0. Failure is just failing to meet that stated goal and objective. That club you wanted to bring up to presidents, that member you wanted to add to your organization. Finding that failure on a regular basis is actually a good thing. The best leader I ever worked for, his name was Ross Perot. How many of you know who that is? All right, most people over 40 will remember him. He actually built 2 billion-dollar organizations. He ran for president twice in the 90s. He has the highest popular vote of any nonpartisan. In other words, he's an independent. And under different circumstances, he could have won. A lot of people have said that. I thought he would have been fabulous because I had the opportunity to work with Ross at a multi-billion-dollar company, which was General Motors. EDS, Electronic Data Systems, was the IT side of General Motors. And I had the opportunity of connecting with him, the best leader I've ever worked around. The only person who's made the hair on the back of my head stand up. We would get together and he would start telling us stories about how he started EDS. Same concept. He was working for IBM, doing a great job for IBM. And he thought this, he said, you know, many of these places, they don't have IT departments. Why don't we, EDS, why don't we become their managed services? Why don't we handle their IT? Now, no such thing back in those days. There were not even microcomputers. It was all mainframes. And when IBM heard about it, they said, no, we don't like this idea. We're not going to let you do this. So he went off on his own and he started a company called EDS out of his trunk. First company, no. Second company, no. 10th company, no. 20th company, no. What he didn't realize was IBM was sending people ahead of him and said, do not do business with Ross. If you do business with Ross, then we may just void your warranty. Think about that for a moment from an IT perspective. And then he got to number 77. And a gentleman named Herman Lay, who can associate that name? Potato chips. Herman Lay is the founder of Lay's potato chips. He looked at it, he says, IBM actually came and said, don't do business with this guy. I'm an entrepreneur. Let me give him a chance. And the rest is history. He built a $1 billion organization. Then he sold it to General Motors for $2.5 billion. I happened to be there in Detroit. And then he stayed off for 3 years. And then he built another multi-billion-dollar company and sold it to Dell. He built everything on failure. To be able to listen to him talk about this. The reason I had the hair on my back of my head standing when he would tell us stories is because he did not let anything stop him. And so if you think about that, if you think about those two men and the concept of looking at failure in a different way, welcoming failure, absorbing failure, getting excited about failure, moving failure forward, and then learning from it, that's a formula for success. All success is built on failure. And so we want to embrace failure. We want to make friends of failure. We want to be close to failure because we know it's helping us grow. One of my favorite women is Mother Cabrini. And I'll just give you a small snapshot of Mother Cabrini. She was born in 1850. 1850. Think about that. 8 weeks premature. Now, in those days, that was a death sentence. 8 weeks, 2 months premature in 1850, not 1950, in 1850. And so everybody kind of gave up on her and they put her in her place. They took care of her. They babied her and all of this. And at one point she says, no, I want to be a nun. She went to the diocese and says, I want to volunteer. They said, no. I want to volunteer. They said, no. I want to volunteer. They said, no. So she started her own diocese. She actually worked with the Pope, met with the Pope. And the Pope said to her, you're too frail. And one of her responses was, I can either serve my frailty or I can serve my purpose, but I can't serve both. And so she went on to found 67 organizations in New York, South America, Central America, all headed by women. And she made a huge impact. And by the way, 67 is such an interesting number because she died at 67 when they thought she might live into her teen years. She might live at 25 and 30, and they kept pushing that. And she lived 67 fruitful, amazing years through all the failures. I'm giving you a small snapshot of what the failure was. I want you to imagine a woman in early 1900s going to New York and going to New York City and saying, I'm here, I'm going to build, and the mayor saying no, the archdiocese says no, we don't want women. All of those things. If you want a great movie, it's Cabrini. You can watch this actual in line. But she understood, she embraced failure, she took after it, she worked through it, she embraced it, right? If you think about that from an overall perspective. And then, of course, we're going to talk about President Lincoln. He's my favorite president, has always been. Now, I want you to think about this, right? This text right up here is just 10 out of 12 are negative. And if you look at his sweetheart dying, and by the way, this is just the face of it. Do you know that he had 4 sons? And did you know that 2 of them, one died at 4 years old, one died at 11 years old? Another one died at 18, but it was after he was assassinated. Can you imagine Mary, his wife, having to deal with assassination as well as 3 out of 4 sons? But if you study this just for a second, right, you don't have to go through all of this. A nervous breakdown, defeated for Speaker of the Illinois House, defeated for domination of Congress. I want you to explore a thought. What if President Lincoln didn't exist? Who would have had the courage to fight that war and lose 700,000 people? Pause on that for just a second. Was it the next president? Would he or she have the courage to stand up and go after it and put the troops out there? There's a lot more defeat behind this. He had generals who were close to closing up battles that wouldn't do it. At one point, in both parties disliked him, did not get along with him. Lots of people hated him. And of course, we all know that he got assassinated. But for his persistence, for his view on failure, he kept going. This right here is 30 years, almost 30 years, 28 years. From that first concept down to the bottom is almost 30 long years. And so it gives you that opportunity to see that. And what I'm here to do is to challenge us, right? I asked this already, what's your last greatest gut-wrenching failure? And I challenge us all to look at it from that perspective where it's a friend of ours. And if we understand that failure is on this side of success, and we keep going after it, keep doing it, keep working through it. So that's the concept here. So I'm going to go through a few slides and I look for, so hopefully I've helped you look at failure from a different perspective as a friend, as something you can embrace. And I want to look through some neuroscience. What I did was I asked some of the other search engines, what are some of the latest, greatest concepts on failure? And so here's a neurobiology of productive versus destructive failure. So I'm just going to give you 5 tips as we wrap up here. And so I want you to consider not all failure triggers the same neural pathways. All a neural pathway is a path where if you do it enough, it will move everything out and it'll become automatic for you. It'll become autonomous for you. That's how athletes remember things. They create neural pathways. That's how great speakers, they create neural pathways. And so the finding is that, and then we have the concept of failure itself is neutral. Its impact is determined by the emotional and psychological context in which it occurs. And so simply you can say, how do I look at failure? Do I look at it from a friend perspective? Do I look at it as a necessity? Do I look at it as something, a learning experience? Or do I kick the table and get mad and get angry about it? So the latest things are saying it's not all equal. Excuse me. So you want to ensure that you're looking at failure in the most productive way. The failure spectrum and nuanced responses. Finding moving beyond binary, success, failure, research emphasizes spectrum. In other words, here's failure, here's success. It's a spectrum. And so if I lost 4 pounds and I wanted 4, it may be right over here in this spectrum. So if you understand that it is a spectrum, over here, what's over here? Not even trying. I want to lose 5 pounds. I didn't exercise. I didn't do anything. That's over here. But it's a spectrum. And so if you look at it from that perspective, profound thought, treating a minor mistake like a catastrophic failure, reaction, or vice versa, overreaction, underreaction is deeply damaging. So I want you to embrace failure, but realize that if you look at it in the incorrect way, that it's going to hamper you. It's going to shy away. That's why you'll see people who fail one time and they never try again. They fail on a date. Oh, that's it. I'm not going to go on any more dates. They went after an elected office and they lost that office. So I'm not going to do that anymore because they're looking at failure in the wrong way, in my opinion. And some of the neuroscience that's out there, right? Neuroscience. This is the newest, latest, greatest concepts here for just a moment. Existential reframing, failure as data of the real. So let's explain that. Failure provides unique access to reality as it is, not as we wish or model it to be. It punctures illusions until you extend yourself out, until you push the boundaries, until you don't know where center of gravity is, until you push yourself out. And I want you to consider that, right? On the other side of failure is success, if you think about it from an overall perspective. And then it's an encounter with the limits of our current understanding and control, source of wisdom and humility. But you have to fail. You have to fail. Now, I can tell you, Al, I've failed in business several times, but it never stopped me from continuing to go on. It's an opportunity to learn. So think about this, existential reframing, failure as data of the real. Vulnerability paradox. Counterintuitive leaders who authentic. This is a big one, by the way. I want you to consider this, who share their own past failures and uncertainties, increase psychological safety, trust, and team learning more effectively. In other words, on the way here, one of my friends called me. He's having a child. And he said, my kids are in their 30s. And he said, Al, if you could have your kids again, over again, and you started from young, what would you do differently than you did this time? And I said, absolutely, I would have taught them my failures. I would have sat there and said, Jake, Kalela, here's what I did in business, and here's where it went really, really well, and here's where it didn't go so well, and here's the 3 reasons why. I want to teach the kids that. I would have done that. I didn't do that. So what this is saying here is that if leadership would share their failures, like you and me, we're all leaders in this room. If we would share our failures, you're going to be so much more impactful. And so permission to fall isn't enough. Modeling the process of failing, learning, and persisting is the most powerful catalyst. And in Japan, they have the study of failure. And it is pioneered in Japan. They study, it's called systems type thinking, where they're looking at it all. They're not just looking at a failure point. This is a study of failure. And this failure point right here is actually influenced by so many other things. And Japan is doing that study and working through that. So they look at the entire failure landscape. And so I want to encourage you to take the adaptive mind, seek potential out of the comfort zone. Comfort zone for me is 3 feet around me. I want you to explore stepping out of it. And then embrace failure. It's actually a good thing, and learn from failure. Lots of invaluable lessons. And it's a short poem that I got from chat and myself. I edited it to drive home the point. What do we do with failure? What do you do when the world says no? When dreams fall flat and progress is slow? Do you shrink, retreat, and curse the cost, or rise again with all you've lost? What do you do when the path gets rough, when prayers feel weak and grit's not enough? Do you bury your hope in a grave of regret, or turn that pain into power and rise with no net? Abraham Lincoln, you defeat. Elections lost. Businesses beat. But still he stood, tattered and tested, and kept walking till freedom rested. They told Mother Cabrini, no to China. Not your mission, not your time. But heaven retreated her weary feet, and she built miracles street by street. Ross Perot heard 77 no's, but still he rose as the giant grows. Colonel Sanders, fried through rejection and scorn, his deep dream, deep battered, but proudly reborn. And me? I've lost more than I care to share, fired and forgotten, broke beyond repair, homeless, hurting, yet somehow whole, still forging ahead with a fire in my soul. So what do we do with failure, my friends? We don't let it crush us and let it begin, for every fall is a forging flame that shapes our souls and etches our name. So Toastmasters, Speakers Bureau, fail forward faster.
Go anywhere. You have to stay here and play the music.
Okay. Wow, let me see why I'm having trouble with this. Can you see what's wrong?
Let's see. Not very good. Losing my grip in my old age.
Oh,
Right, that's okay.
Oh, there-
That and that. Okay, thank you, Al. I did hear this speech on Friday at Fantastic Communicators. When you posed a question about your last gut-wrenching failure, I had to think back, and I never really thought of it until today when you mentioned that question again. And so now it's time for me to face it and tell you all about, in my mind, my greatest gut-wrenching failure. About 70 years ago, this may be a little hard for you to believe, 70 years ago, I went to school and the English teacher said we had to give a speech. I did not want to give a speech. And this teacher said, if you don't show up tomorrow, you get an F. I said, yeah, right. That's what I want. Give me that F. Give me that F. And I went home and convinced my registered nurse mother I was too sick to go to school. I had never been able to convince her I was too sick to go to school in my life when I wasn't too sick to go to school. But this time I was able to convince her. Somehow I was convincing enough that she said, okay, you can stay home. She didn't know that I was supposed to give a speech. I showed up and the teacher said, well, we didn't get to you yesterday, so you have to speak today. And that was stuck right out in my brain as my greatest gut-wrenching failure. And I have faced that for the last 50 years. So thank you very much, Al. Okay, I told Al he didn't get to sit down because he has to face the music now, because tradition has it that our qualified speakers, either online or in person, can give him a few thoughts and suggestions or a few reflections before they submit their votes. And so do we have anybody, first of all, in the room? Dominique. Dominique is our qualified speaker in the room, and she will give her thoughts and comments and questions or whatever she wishes to do.
Stand over here a little bit.
All right.
Thank you, Tom. Al, your voice is so strong and persuasive, and your mannerisms are natural, and your body language is comfortable. You look like you were born to be on the stage. I would eliminate the slideshow completely. It was distracting to have the stuff about Lincoln up there when you first started talking about Colonel Sanders, then Ross Perot, then Mother Peroni, and then we got to Lincoln. And he almost felt a little short changed because of how much screen time he had. I would suggest that you blank the screen if you do use slides until the right moment to reveal the slide. And for PowerPoint, don't read your slides. I'm reading them ahead of you, and now I'm no longer listening to you, and you're upstaging yourself. It's heartbreaking. You can use visuals like photos with 1 to 3 words, like somebody holding their head in abject failure or misery to communicate, and then have failure in your favorite font that looks miserable or scratchy or something. So I'd suggest you talk to Sharon Kenty about that. She's outstanding with PowerPoints and helps people eliminate the PowerPoint death. You had a couple of cute, funny grammar mistakes. You said took the sails out of you. First you said took the wind out of your sails, and then took the sails, which I smiled because I liked. And the hair on the back of your head, it's typically neck, but in your case, it probably is your head. So I withdraw. And work on the pronunciation of necessity. There's one thing I would have loved to see on the slide, and that's your poem. I would have enjoyed reading along with you to see, because some of the words were lost on me and I wished I could rewind. And because I couldn't, but had I been able to look up one line just for half a second to make sure I heard you correctly, that would have been really cool. That was a beautiful poem. And I don't care if AI helped you write it. It's garbage in, garbage out, and you put great things into it, and it spit out some really wonderful things. Your movement was lopsided. You favored the lectern side of the stage. And if you imagine that this entire auditorium is full, you would feel really strange staying in this third of the stage. So again, you could walk in front of your slide when you're done talking about it, even before that. It doesn't matter if you cast a shadow on the wall. Feel free to use the whole stage, because I've seen your movement, and your movement is purposeful and wonderful. And I'd really like to see that. And last, I'd like to see you wear a suit. I think it lends more credibility. You're a very credible speaker. And I saw you in a suit at the contest and you looked great. So I would say return to that. Overall, though, you convinced me. I'm ready to fail, except I really hope I don't tomorrow, because I have something really important that means a lot. But I'm thinking about it, believe me.
Awesome.
Thank you for
Thank you.
a wonderful speech, Tom.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. And let's see, we'll ask Bon, do you have anything to add? Yeah, come on up. Bon's our newest qualified speaker, just qualified last month, so.
Thank you. Great presentation. Also, that is my second time. I had the pleasure to hear your speech Friday. Given this short time, you already made some changes, and some of them I think fundamental, structural. So kudos to that. To Dominic's point, very eloquent. Your voice was crystal clear and made your message so strong. Maybe that is my personal preference. I saw a gap between the first part of your presentation and the second part. For me, I feel the gap may be too strong. When you got to those information, educational, or analysis about the failure and what stands behind the mental analysis, I would like to hear you refer to some stories you just mentioned, that 4 beautiful stories you just mentioned in the beginning, and put them on the table and give some reflection that might enhance your message even further. So that is my personal feeling. But all in all, great presentation. I'm very much convinced. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'm going to call on Brian next, but after I would just make a couple of words on my behalf, and that is one of the things that really impressed me, and it shows a level of experience and stage presence, was you did not seem to be upset over the technology issues. Many of us doing technology stuff and having all those problems would have been on edge or angry or whatever it is, and you handled it perfectly. And when you stepped right into it, once you started, it was everything had been running just as exactly as you had hoped. So I'm impressed with that. And it shows that you're really ready for prime time. So Brian, did you have any additional comments? And then I will be looking for hands from the our studio audience there. No, our home at home audience there. So
So this is the privilege of showing up in person. You get to go.
that's
first.
right. We'll have if people show up in person, get rewarded.
There you go.
Yeah, I may even get a kiss on the cheek if they're of the right gender, but anyway.
Stand back. All right. Good job, man. And I've seen you deliver a few speeches, and I know how animated you can be. Oh, sorry. And I know how animated you can be. And I was surprised, and I hate to rehash some of the things that have been said, but that you really didn't venture out very far away from the lectern. It was almost like there was something over there. And I don't see any notes, so I'm not sure why you were tied to the lectern, but also that had you put on the first slide bullet points or just the lines of the stories you were going to tell us about the Colonel Sanders, Ross Perot, was it Mother Cabrini?
Yes.
Mother Cabrini. I really, really enjoyed that part. And I only made a few notes. I think the original title was What Do You Do with Failure? Okay. And then the thing that I heard that stood out to me the most was you learn more from failure than you do from your successes. So now I'm really excited for the number of failures I have ahead of me. And to relate to your story about Mother Cabrini's 67 parishes and that she lived to be 67, this year I will be 67 years old. So that really stuck with me. I don't know. I think it really was very informative. I knew all the stuff about Lincoln already. I also thought that there was a lot more that we got from what you were saying versus what was on the slides, which I also found somewhat distracting. But I think if the first slide had the stories you were going to tell, and then the slide about Lincoln had all that data on it, that would have flowed a little more smoothly. And I agree with Tom. When your technology fails, I think you can pretty much count on that just about any time you're using technology. And I do applaud the fact that you just move on. The show must go on, and you did that with aplomb. I celebrate you. I hope you become a qualified speaker.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we are ready to call on members on the screen up here. And if I first hand I see to go up will be who gets called out. Raise your hand if you're a qualified speaker, and if we have some time, we
Roger.
may
Roger,
call
Roger.
upon any others. Michael, okay.
No, it's Roger.
Oh, Roger. Okay, I saw the flash up there. Roger, you have a comment first? Okay, go ahead.
I'll make mine quick. Al, I thought you did a terrific job tightening up the speech from Friday. Dominique kind of reviewed everything, so I'll just say ditto.
He mentioned Friday. One of the things that future QSs should think about is that Fantastic Communicators has a tradition of seeing the people right before they go. It's the last Friday of the month, and it's only on Zoom, but it gives them a chance to speak and hear qualified speakers evaluate them, giving them some final little tune-ups. And so that's what the Friday Night Club does on the Friday before Fantastic Communicators, the Friday before Speakers Bureau. Okay, next hand is
My hand's up now.
uh
My hand's up, Michael.
go ahead. Whoever it was, just
Thank you, Tom.
you, Michael, you?
Yeah, I got a few things to say. So thank you, Al, and I'm glad that you're back being brave enough to come back to our speakers bureau after a few years of hiatus. So I don't think you need the Lincoln story. Everybody knows it. It's boring. I don't want to hear about it. But the other stories I thought were fascinating, and especially your experience with Ross Perot. I mean, I want to hear more about that. And well, Dominique said you could read the poem. I didn't love the poem, and it didn't sound authentic and didn't do anything for me. I want to hear the stories, and maybe a few more stories from you. And what is it that picked you up? Was it the love of your kids? Was you couldn't stand, been down so long, it looks like up to me, and you're sick of being on the ground? So something a little more about that. Nonetheless, I think these stories are important, and the message is clear and important for us. Thank you, Al. Back to you, Tom.
I'm glad you brought up Ross Perot. I remember that I was very much of an activist in one of the parties at that time, and Ross Perot really did have a crack at winning until he got personal threats to him and his family and decided to pull out. He would have had a reasonable chance of being the first third-party candidate to take charge and do something significant. Okay, I'm looking at hands. I don't see any hands yet. Are we?
Upper left.
Marilyn. Okay, Marilyn, go ahead.
That's a timer hand.
Is that it? Okay.
That's my timer hand.
Else. Okay. Uh, all right. All right. I don't see any other people with comments. Make sure you vote. It's so important. We have to have a 2/3 vote of the QSs that submit their votes, and those will go into Rob. I guess we'll get into Michael Osher, however it gets there, and it'll get back to me. So thank you very much, Al. I appreciate that. And we are ready now to go on to our next speaker, to be introduced by our co-chair, Michael Osher. Michael, take it away.
Thank you, Tom and Rob. I want to make sure Natalie has sharing ability.
Yes, I can share.
Okay, great. Natalie, our next speaker comes to us from the UK and from Founders District, where she is the Central Division Director. She's been a Toastmaster for 5 years, and she's finishing her 2nd consecutive year as a Division Director. Next year, she says she'll be the Public Relations Manager in Founders. How does she have time for this? She's a single mom. Her 10-year-old daughter, you can imagine how active she is, but her daughter thinks her mom is always off to eat toast when she goes to Zoom for her Toastmaster meetings. I'm getting hungry now. More importantly for us, and why we're listening to Natalie tonight, she works for the local government in the United Kingdom, specifically the Isle of Wight off the southern part of England. And for the last 3 years, she's been working toward her Bachelor's in Science in Public Health as part of her public health practitioner degree in England, and apprenticeship from the University in Bristol. Now, in England, a Bachelor's in Science is much more like a master's here, because their high school is much more challenging and their university is much more difficult than the universities that we're used to. So her final exams or presentations will be in July, and she's giving talks like this in preparation for her oral exams. And she'll be giving her final presentation to the university, where she will showcase her knowledge and competencies as a public health practitioner. Today's presentation is part of that graduation requirement. So presenting Improving Our Health, a Community Approach. Join me in welcoming distinguished Toastmaster, Natalie Thomas.
Fab. Thank you, Michael. My first question is, how many people are aware of the Isle of Wight Festival? So if we think of Jimi Hendrix, The Who, I am seeing some hands. Brilliant. So the Isle of Wight might actually be really small in comparison to the rest of the United Kingdom, but we do actually have quite an interesting background. So I'm going to be talking today about the Isle of Wight Cardiovascular Disease Library Learn Initiative. And one of the things here, this has been something that I've worked on for the last year as part of my degree apprenticeship. So I'm going to just do a little bit of an introduction of the how and the why, and then we're going to walk through the presentation. So we're really going to understand why this is important in the community, why cardiovascular disease is important to health professionals. Then we're going to look a little bit more into the presentation. We're going to walk through to the final 6 months and the amount of loans that we received. And then we're going to talk about the next steps. And then I'm going to leave you with a quote, which I think when we look at health, even though I am over the pond and you guys are over in the States, you should all be able to really take on board, and hopefully empowers you to really take those key actions in improving your health and health of your friends and your family. See, the Isle of Wight, as Michael mentioned, is South Coast, and we are an island of around 140,000 people. So as Michael said, I am a division director in Founders District. So that covers Irvine, Orange County. So when I'm saying to my Toastmaster colleagues, I live what would be in American standards in a shoebox because I actually live in a village of 5,000 people. So if we're thinking of the city of Irvine, how many Isle of Wights we could actually put in the city of Irvine is quite phenomenal. The Isle of Wight, as I mentioned, has got a lot of background when it comes to music. And over the summer, we do get a lot of people that will come over here for the holidays. Even though it might be really picturesque, we actually do have a lot of poverty here. So do not be deceived when you're going onto Google, typing up Isle of Wight. There's a lot of challenges here. And I think when we bring in that health perspective, we've got one hospital, only one, for a huge amount of people. So that is really important that we have that preventative health out there. So we're able to really empower people to make those conscious health choices. So as I now move into why cardiovascular disease is really important. So as you can see on the slides, and my slides are very bold because I think why not? And as part of my final exams, we are allowed to be super creative. And I think from that perspective of this is a showcase of my 3 years doing my degree apprenticeship. I want to go big because why not? So bear with the colours, that's all I'm going to say. So as we look at cardiovascular disease, there's a lot of risks to other health issues. So if you've got high blood pressure, you're more likely to have a stroke and develop other health conditions. And cardiovascular disease also creates that premature mortality, and in the UK is a leading cause of death. So this was one of the reasons why this initiative was really important. Because one of the other things with the Isle of Wight, we have one of the highest proportions of older adults living in the country. So we have, especially in the little area that I live, around 85% of the highest levels of people that are aged over 85. So when we think of going back to that one hospital, really getting those positive messages out around all of this is super important. So I'm now going to really start talking about the Library Learn initiative. And one of the things that was really key was the fact that we really wanted to use the community around us to base the library initiative. So when we look at asset-based community development, that is looking at what is out there in the community and how can we use it to the best of our ability. So on the Isle of Wight, we have 7 libraries. Might seem quite a lot for a small place, but we seem to do really well with what we've got here. So one of the first things as part of the initiative was looking at where could we put this scheme. So the scheme, if I just go into a brief nutshell, so you would go to a library to borrow a book. You can here in the UK, and I do know in some states in the US, you can do a similar thing. You can go to a library and borrow a blood pressure monitor and a cuff, and you can take that home for around 2 to maybe 3 weeks. So that was why taking it out into the community was really important. And then a thing as well, when we look at asset-based community development as well, you've also got those key links with other organisations. And the real thing here was making sure that we'd give as many tools to members of the community so they could really take on board those health choices. At the start of the scheme, which was September last year, I hoped that we'd get some loans because it was the first time that this initiative was launched on the island, I wanted at least 10 because we had no idea if something that would work on the mainland would work here. But later in my presentation, I am going to share how many loans we did get over that 6-month trial period. So on the next slides, I'm not going to play it too long, but I'm just going to walk through what these 2 little pictures are. So as part of the initiative, it was really important for me as a public health practitioner to really get that feedback, because in order to have a successful initiative working in the community, you need to have those boots on the ground analysis to be able to say, this is working great, maybe let's change this and improve it for next time. So one of the things when it comes to the feedback, we obviously had the online way. And if I now move into my video, bear with me 1 second. It'll now take you into the paper version of the feedback form. And one of the things which I worked on here was really trying to understand, does paper work or does online work? And as part of that continuous improvement, I created a QR code to really try and increase how many online feedback forms we were getting, because I think there is that global assumption that everybody's going to move towards an online platform of giving feedback. But actually, good old paper and doing it old school was really beneficial, and we got 34 feedback forms back. And as I'm moving to the next picture, this was the initial poster, which was designed by our communications team. And this was one that we had borrowed from Hampshire County Council. And when I went out into the community and I was plastering it around the community centres and the churches, I saw the opportunity of getting that user feedback to go, does a poster like this actually work? And a lot of that feedback that I gained was, this is really not engaging, it's boring, and we really need to improve it. So if I now play this short video, you're now going to see with that feedback from the community what the version 2 poster looked like. And as you can see here, if I just press pause, we've now got a completely different looking poster, which looks so much more engaging. You've got a nice happy chappy that is inviting people to go to their local library. And I think the powerful thing with this poster here, it emphasizes that it is a free thing that you can take home to do. Because I think when we think back to poverty, and if people are living in financial challenges, they might not have $25 to go and buy a blood pressure monitor. So this was really important that we focused on the value of saying that it was free. But one of the other things that I was analysing was, yes, it's great to put everything in a library, but if you're not a bookworm, and I know people will absolutely go to libraries if you like books, but if you're not in that mindset to go to an environment like that, how are you actually going to go there? So working with our NHS partners, we created a little card which will be coming up right now. And this was our invitation cards. So if you'd gone to your medical practice and you'd spoken to a nurse, the purpose here would be you'd get the little card, so it's shaped like a business card, and that would be your invitation message to go, oh, what's this? Then you'd go, okay, I've now got a reason to actually go to the local library. And feedback that we've got from our NHS partners have said that this little card, even though it's really small, has actually been really beneficial at taking those people from the medical practice to the library to actually go, can we go and borrow a blood pressure monitor? As I move now into the next part of the initiative, as part of that continuous improvement, it was really important for me to go out into the community and visit all of the libraries. Because yes, we obviously created the who, the why, and the what, but it was down to the libraries to really interpret this initiative and making it fit for their local communities. And we do have a place on the Isle of Wight called Cows. And I know the amount of people that will spell cows like a cow. This is how we spell cows on the Isle of Wight. And your homework is to go onto Google and look up the 7 wonders of the Isle of Wight. Because, again, we might be a really small little island just off the south coast, but we're a quirky little place as well. So this midterm visits really helped us get that feedback. So from February onwards, we were able to take that feedback and really focus on improving this initiative moving forward. So in March this year, we hit that 6 month of the initiative, and we actually got 164 library loans, which for me is absolutely incredible. Because like I just mentioned at the start of the initiative, I wanted at least 10 because there was that unknown of whether something like this would actually really work in the community. And as you can see on this slide, there was those moments where a lot of high activity, but then obviously over Christmas when people are really focusing on eating, people would not be wanting to go to a place like a library to go and borrow a blood pressure monitor. Therefore, it was really important from January onwards that we brought in a communication campaign just to remind people that, okay, you've had your fun eating loads of food. Now you really need to pay that close attention to your health. And this was why, as you can see in February, you've got those key spikes of engagement. And one of the other things with the monthly loan numbers, we brought in a community library later into the programme in East Cows, and that's therefore why there's a missing gap in their analysis. And I think from that lessons learned, I wish I'd brought them in sooner, because just in those 2 months, they had got 11 loans. And I think the powerful thing there is really understanding those communities for that community makeup. So East Cows has got quite a heavy background in shipping. So in order for me to get to the mainland, or in a way back to the UK, I have to go on a boat. So we do have a lot of employment in that industry. And you also think people working those manual and routine jobs are, from data and evidence, more likely to either smoke or have bad health. So that was one of the reasons why I was thinking, I just wish I'd brought them in a lot sooner. So as I move into that reflection of this initiative and going back to leadership as Toastmasters, something that we're always talking about, I am a transformational leader, and one of the biggest reflections that I've had for this initiative is the passion that I've had has just been oozing out. And I think because it has been one of my sole projects that I've done in my last year of my degree, it's kind of been really obvious. But when I reflect on that, it's been that, hang on a minute, Nat, not everybody is going to share the same amount of passion that I have. And people are not going to be supportive. And I think one of the things that I've really had to do when it comes to my leadership style I've had to be adaptable because, yes, we've got Christmas. You guys have Thanksgiving, and over the last couple of months, you're focused on being with your family and sharing in big celebrations. So that was where I had to be adaptable of, well, we've got the plan, we've got the goals. I'm going to have to change it up just to make sure that we can move to the start of the year and really take the program to the next level. And I think when we look at leadership, we're always talking about, oh, well, this was great, this was fabulous, but we're never talking about the challenges. And when I reflect on my leadership challenges, really trying to understand that engagement of a couple of the areas on the island. So we have a village called Freshwater, and we've got great old cows. Both of those two locations, the loan uptake was really low. And there was me thinking, hang on a minute, why are people not believing in this vision? Why are people not going, yes, this would be great? So I had to work out, how do I take this, communicate in a way that people will go, oh yeah, this would be great to have in the local community. And there was also this key leadership reflections on, well, if we've got competing demands, and especially in government and the NHS, everybody's trying to do 1,000,001 things, that sometimes things might look great on paper, but it might not be the right time for that particular initiative. So as I'm moving to my next steps, now that we're into phase 2 of this game, we can definitely see that the data has proved that quite a few of the libraries over the east part of the Isle of Wight did do really successful in the pilot. So the purpose there would be to increase the library loan availability. And overall, I would love to have as many islanders take the opportunity for using this game. And if I leave you with this quote, so health empowerment means giving individuals the knowledge, confidence, and tools to take control of their well-being. Because when people are empowered, healthier choices become possible, sustainable, and transformative. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. I wish I was on your oral committee so we could give you a high score path. If we have a few minutes, if there's some comments that Natalie might be able to share, you might be able to share with her that might help. I liked her slide, but I want to focus on the message. And if you can imagine, it's such a different world. When Natalie graduates, she'll be the only person on the island with a non-medical public health degree in the whole island, because there's nurses and there's physicians, but she's going to be the one, she's going to be the health educator for that whole island of 140,000 people. For that, it's just a small hospital. If you're really sick, you have to go out by helicopter because you can't go on the boat. So think about how important this role is, where people can afford a blood pressure cuff.
Oh,
And so you have to lend them to. It's a very different world than what you can bring to them. So if anybody has any comments about her talk that might be helpful, now's your chance. Dominique, are you raising your hand?
Michael?
Go ahead, Dominique.
Yes, I am raising my hand. Natalie, I was wondering if there's a way for us to contribute some money to donate to help the libraries get more blood pressure monitors, or mail them to you or something. I've got 3 or 4 laying around the house from when I had my open heart surgery, and I would love to get them to good homes.
Oh, bless you. I think one of the things that I'll do later on today, I'll connect back with Michael and we'll see what we can do, because I think, why not? Thank you.
I'm helping her on some other talks and trying to mentor her a little bit on this. So Dominique, thank you for being so generous. But yeah, I mean, it's a different world. NHS is a national health system. Imagine everybody's on Medicaid and Medi-Cal and there's no private insurance. It's mind-boggling, right? Any other comments from our group? Michael Alexander. Dr. Michael Alexander.
And for those of you who don't know, I'm a doctor, but I'm not a physician. I need to make clear. I think, Natalie, you've got something, very, very interesting program here. There were a couple of things in the presentation which I was curious about. Number one, you really were talking about the distribution. And I'm a results-oriented guy. I wanted to know, were more people coming in? What have you got any evidence that this is actually changing the level of health? I didn't hear that. I would have liked to. So it came off a little bit to me, I guess the best way to put it, came a little bit to me like a Toastmasters speech, not like an academic presentation. So you want to watch, I know you want to work for your audience, but you want to work on that. There were a couple of things which I will ask you technically. I don't want to take too much time here, but one of your slides, you had videos to change, I think it was the second slide, the continuous improvement and the blood pressure monitor thing. And I was waiting for something dynamic because I saw video, and it kind of felt like a false pull on that score to me. In addition, and again, you got to deal with me as a numbers guy, I saw monthly loans per library. And I wanted to know, I'm not saying you failed, I'm just saying it sets in my mind the question, why is it different for each library? And if I could see a total that said how many were we done altogether, I think that would have made me a little bit more satisfied than seeing, gee, East Cowsland didn't do anything till the end, and why is Newport different than Ride in terms of their monthly schedules? So again, I was distracted, and I would have liked to have seen just something total. And with that, I'll step back and let other people go.
Michael, part of that might be my fault. I had her take out some data slides because they were very geeky that the academics would love, and you would love, of course. The other part is, it's public health. Sarah, you know this. In 10 years, we'll know if she made a difference. That's the problem. But think about, though, if you even had, I think there were 150 loans, and those people took their blood pressure and called their physician if their numbers were too high or too low, they'll be saving lives left and right. And you're right, the next phase is going to be amazing because they could actually save dozens of lives here. I get excited by it. Michelle.
Thanks, Natalie. I have a similar thing to Michael's. In your, I think it was your second slide. It had three things. And one of the things you were talking about was that you had an elderly, not elderly, you had an older aged population that would benefit from the program. But it looked like you could have easily said, we have approximately 70% are over 50, or 70% are over 60, or whatever that percentage was. And it's a lot clearer than a lot of. And to be careful, because like Michael said, when you're doing something academic, they will expect to see statistics that illustrate a point, not just the language that explains and summarizes the point without very many more words.
Thanks, Michelle. And she does have more data, but I didn't want to take an hour for her presentation. All right. Hi, our favorite ER nurse, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Michael. And yes, Natalie, I work in healthcare. So I feel a little inclined to speak on this because I do patient education as part of what I do now. I was ER for a very long time, and we would get the number of patients that come into the emergency department and use it as their personal clinic because they can't get into the clinics or into the, and they're, oh, I have this crazy headache, and now my blood pressure is 250 over 130, which for those of you that are not medical, high is 140 over 90. So those are, we're gonna die soon numbers. I love that you guys are implementing this, that this is where your project is going. I think that is a really innovative idea to put it in a library because we all have access to libraries. And if you've ever been in a hospital, I know you only have one, but I'm sure you've been there. We are chaos. And I don't think it's not only true here in the US, but from what I hear across the world, there's so many things going on in a hospital that checking out a blood pressure cuff probably isn't going to be something they're going to be able to do, or checking blood pressures on a regular basis. And then, of course, on an island, everyone has to get to the one location. And I think that is a really innovative idea, putting it in a library situation where people have access. And what you're doing here is you're giving people community access. That is huge. I'm going to argue with Michael on this one. I would say put the geeky numbers back in. I'm assuming that this presentation is probably going to be longer than 20 minutes for that type of presentation. Yes. Okay. So if it's a bachelor's that's similar to a master's, yes, our presentations get to be wonderful things like an hour. And you also have the opportunity there that you're going to be in front of people that they're going to want the geeky numbers. So where I do appreciate that you're tailoring it for this audience because you're in a very different audience situation right now. When you go to that presentation, and I've done those presentations, they're super fun and a little nerve-wracking. The geeky numbers help, and it helps draw out your time. And then you want to give as many outcomes as you do have. Now, Michael pointed it out. We don't have outcomes in public health for about 10 years because we're not going to actually see numbers make such a significant change. You may be able to pull some qualitative data, though, of maybe a case or two or a few people. If you can get some reports in that way, I would use either some qualitative data or if you can get a hold of a case study that says this one person, you don't have to give names. I don't know your legal status on confidentiality, but out here it gets a little probably very similar. Okay. I would say get a case study that can show you had someone who rented the blood pressure cuff, that blood pressure cuff, then they had a high blood pressure, they went into the emergency department, they were saved, or something along those lines where you can really kind of pull in that personal experience of we saved someone's life. That's going to make an impact for that presentation that is going to go leaps and bounds above any other data and numbers. As much as I love to think that in healthcare we are all about numbers and data, we're not. We're heartfelt, we want stories, we want life-saving, and I think that's really going to be beneficial to you. Overall, I love it. And I might, if you're okay with it, steal this because I work with our public health department here in San Bernardino County. And we have very similar issues. So I will share this if that's okay with you. Thank you so much.
And Sarah, I'll send you her contact information so you can do that. We're about out of time here. Natalie, she also had to translate British English into American English. They don't use the word poverty. That we had to change we had to make them Americanized so we would know what they mean. Anyway, Natalie, fabulous job. I know you're going to be giving a bunch of these talks all over the Toastmaster world. And thank you so much. And thank you all for being guinea pigs tonight. Back to you, Tom.
Okay, thank you, Michael, for bringing our speaker in. And I just, uh-oh, did we lose you?
We're all here. We're here.
I'm not seeing anyone. I just wanted to thank Natalie because her speech was so timely because our goal next month is to raise everybody's blood pressure with these speeches from soapbox speeches. So I'm sure we'll raise the average blood pressure in Riverside County will change a little bit, or San Bernardino County, because of the speeches that are given next month. If you are interested in being one of those 2 to 4 minute speakers, please email me. That flyer should include my email that comes out with the district news, so it'll be in there to let me know and get signed up. We have a number of people signed up yet, and we expect to maybe get that to 15 or so. Plus, as I said, the 4 people giving impromptu debates on topics that they don't know what they're going to talk about. We hope that they know what they're talking about when they talk, though. I'll give you a little comment later on, but we want to get to our final speaker, Brian. Brian will be introduced by his significant other, Dominique, and he's going to try to bring a smile to a few of our faces, I think. I'm guessing correctly. There you go, Dominique.
Tonight's speaker is someone who knows how to blend humor with heart and reflection with just the right amount of rebellion, especially in an irreverent speech about his mother. But before he could ever roast his mother in public, he had a little housekeeping to take care of in private. One of the people most responsible for that journey is a dear friend and fellow Toastmaster, Linda Jesse, a compassionate mental health professional who spent 6 months providing therapy for Brian in order to help him find the voice he'll be using tonight. Without Linda Jesse, this speech wouldn't have happened. Some credit goes to Al Batinga as well. Here now, with very little gratitude in his heart and a mischievous gleam in his eye, it gives me pride and pleasure to introduce Brian Rowley with his speech, Happy Mother's Day, a napkin for Alex.
There. All right, can you hear me okay? Sound check? All right. As you heard in the introduction, some of the credit for this speech goes to Al Batinga, because I recall hearing him making a speech about something about your words matter, and it started me thinking about some of the words that had mattered to me when I was younger. So I took the liberty of making a list of things my mother used to say. There are 13 items on this page, and I thought I could try to wing it, but I don't want you to miss any of this. One of the things my mother used to say, and especially if she had more of her children in the room, is she would say, "You all think you're so smart." Let me say that a different way. You all think you're so smart. If you don't recognize sarcasm, you have to kind of reverse engineer that to understand what she's really saying is, you people are stupid, okay? And what I thought to myself is, well, let's see, Mom, you gave birth to us. If you know anything at all about genetics, what are you saying about yourself? One of my favorite words she used to use is the word ridiculous. And I mean, it could come out at any moment for anything I was doing or saying. Like, for instance, when you're a little boy, you might want to be Superman. So you want a cape for Halloween. Oh, that's ridiculous. I remember one time asking her, "Mom, do you really love me?" She said, "You're being ridiculous." Now, I thought I heard the word ridiculous so often that it should have been my middle name. In fact, the word ridiculous had come to the point where when I heard the word ridiculous, if someone said I was ridiculous, what I heard them saying is, "You're stupid." Those two things were synonymous to me. And it almost broke up my second marriage before it even begun. Another story entirely. But she used to say, "Why do you always have to do things the hard way?" And I thought, well, I don't know. I always get the stuff done. So how I do it, I don't think is a matter of hard or easy. It's just the way I get things done. Sometimes that would be followed with, "You can make 2 trips, you know," which was often said when I had my arms around 5 bags of groceries coming from the car into the kitchen. And I thought, yeah, Ma, I can make another trip, but I am Superman and I can carry all these bags. Watch this. And I get them into the kitchen and she's talking about making a second trip. I'd have to work twice as hard. How's that going to save me time and energy? I couldn't put it together. She used to say really cool things about things she wasn't doing. Okay. I'm not heating the outside, you know. Mom, I only left the door open for an extra 10 seconds. I know it's cold outside, but I don't think there's any danger of the polar ice caps melting any faster. She would say, especially in heated, not debates, because it was during times when she was really saying something that she really wanted you to know. And she would say, I'm not talking to the wall, you know. And I had to do everything I could not to turn around and look at the wall to see what did the wall think of what she was saying. And I remember just looking at her and thinking, I'm going to make note of that. And there it is. I've made note of it. There was one time I came into the kitchen, having just woken up, and we used to keep a jar of water in the refrigerator. And you're not supposed to drink right out of the jar, but I opened up the lid of the jar and I took a long drink out of the water. And my mom came around the corner. She saw me. And I thought, oh boy, now I'm going to catch hell for drinking out of the bottle. But that's not what she said. What she said was, that can't be good for your stomach. I thought, this is water. This is the essence of life. Without water, we're not here. I didn't say any of that to her. I wouldn't want to have her talking to the walls again. So I just looked at her and thought, you know, I think there's an expression that goes something like, a wise man speaks because he has something to say, and a fool speaks because he has to say something. Not quite sure how I would relate that to my mother in this situation. I never really spoke back to her in those terms. She used to say, this is one of my favorite questions, who do you think you are anyway? I thought about that sometimes and I thought, well, let's see, if I really put my heart and soul into thinking about who I am ridiculous, and I think I'm really smart, according to you. We used to kid about that with my other siblings. They would say, who do you think you are? Anyway? Yeah, I'm anyway. One of the things that I always thought was fascinating with her is anytime she saw any new invention or new thing in the world, she would say, oh, now what are they going to think of next? And I know she enjoyed every bit of technology that was available because we had an electric toaster. And when microwaves, remember microwaves when they were new? I think we were one of the first families who owned a microwave. And I remember thinking, well, this is going to make it a whole lot easier for her to say when I ask her, what is there for dinner? Well, find something in the freezer and just microwave it. You can make dinner. That happened. She worked at night. I was a latchkey kid. She would see something new and she would say, now I've seen everything. And I thought, really? Let's see, computers are coming into age, and I'm sure that there will be new things all the time. So if you think you've seen everything and you apply logic to that statement at all, I'm pretty sure you realize that's something you should only be able to say once. I wanted to share with you because it wasn't always all these derogatory and unimpressive things my mother had to say. She actually had a few jokes up her sleeve. These are things you probably would know as dad jokes, but she would say, how do you make a Greek urn? Or what's a Greek urn? The answer, about $1.25 an hour. What's a buccaneer? Well, that's a really high price for corn. Sorry. She'd say, how do you make a Venetian blind? Well, you poke them in the eye. I know, groaners. One of the things she would say in exasperation, oh, for Pete's sake. I didn't know who Pete was. I didn't know until much later about St. Peter, and that's who she was talking about. And it only occurred to me much later in life that most people say, for Christ's sake, right? So Peter was just a surrogate for the real Lord. Sorry, Lord. But that's a fact. My mom used to say, for Pete's sake, I had no idea what she was talking about or who Pete was. I did want to tell you one story about something my mother did much later in life, I received a package from her. In this package were some old photos of me. One of them, I'm wearing a hat, and I was taken in a photo booth, which I'm really happy she sent back to me. The other thing that was in there was this letter. I had the privilege of joining the California Air National Guard and attending tech school in a little town called Biloxi, Mississippi. Anybody know anything about Biloxi, Mississippi? I'll tell you two things about Biloxi, Mississippi. One is you are always wet. It's either 95% humidity or it's raining. Those are your two choices. Pick one. And when you're marching to classrooms in that kind of heat, you're either drenched in your own sweat or you're happy to be enjoying the rain. The other thing is when you march in Mississippi, in Biloxi, Mississippi, in fact, if you just walk on the sidewalks, there's this unfamiliar crunching sound. It's not gravel. It's not snow. This is Biloxi. It's hot and steamy. What it is cockroaches about as big as my thumb. They're all over the place. Every place you go, you just start to ignore them, but you hear the crunching as you walk along. Biloxi is not a really pleasant place to be, but I really enjoyed tech school. I enjoyed it so much, I achieved a 97.3% grade point average, which I thought was really good until I heard about a friend of mine who went to the same tech school and came back with a 99.8% grade point average. But I got this letter anyway from my mother. Much later in life, she had been sent this letter of commendation from the Department of the Air Force at Keesler Air Force Base in Mississippi. It is indeed a pleasure to inform you that Brian has graduated with honors. This is quite an accomplishment since historically only 10% of students who attend this course become honor graduates. It uses a whole lot of words I'm sure my mother has never thought of herself. Superior initiative, dedication, positive attitude, superior academic accomplishment, outstanding military performance. This line, his can-do attitude will definitely make him a positive asset to our defense force. And here's the punchline, which I have to believe made my mother laugh. You can be justly proud of your contribution to his accomplishments. I'm thinking, no. And you want to know what her response was to this letter? You ready? Who has any idea what my mom might have done in response to this letter? Are you ready for it? Good one. But here's the actual response. Cue the crickets. I never heard about it. I got this letter, like I said, much later in life. I think it was foreshadowing to her eventual demise. She died in 2008. And I got this package probably a few years before that. So I think she knew what was coming. One of the things she used to say is, do you even know why you're crying? I thought, I think I do. I know I feel something. Maybe the question about, Mom, do you love me? I don't know for sure why I'm crying. Maybe you're right in this case. I don't even know why I'm crying. I just know how I feel. And, you know, if I try to be funny, then I get the, you all think you're so smart comment. So either way, I can't win this. And I thought, you know what? You're right, Mom. I don't know why I'm crying, but I wanted to get to this last part, which is the second part of the title of my speech. The reason my speech is entitled Happy Mother's Day is because her birthday was May 14th, and we just had Mother's Day, and sometimes her birthday would fall on Mother's Day. But anyway, I thought about what Al said about your words matter and how much my mother's words influenced my life. And the thing about Alex, a napkin for Alex, my mom used to say, this is my favorite one. When we sit down at a table, especially if we were at a restaurant, and there's a napkin on the table right in front of you, right? She would say, put your napkin in your lap and act like you know something. ALYKS, that's the Alex I'm talking about. All right, act like you know something. Do your best to look intelligent. I know you're one of my kids, but pretend, pretend just for this minute that you actually know something and you know enough to put your napkin in your lap. And even to this day, when my wife and I go out to dinner, if the napkins are still on the table, I will gently reach over and take her napkin and put it on her lap and say, Alex. And she knows exactly what I'm talking about. And we have a laugh about that almost every time. Lastly, you might remember the name Linda Jessie from my introduction and why she was such an important influence on me. I went through 6 months of therapy with her to reduce the level of sensitivity I had about my mother and anything that came up about her. I've gotten to the part where I just don't care anymore. So much so that I can actually have fun and try to be funny at her expense, hopefully for your entertainment. Linda Jessie, in a Toastmasters meeting, must have been at least 10, 12 years ago now. It was a table topics question. I'll never forget it. Because they said, when you were little, what did you want to be when you grow up? And they called on Linda Jessie. And she came to the lectern. And I'll never forget what she said. I wanted to be a good mom. Fellow Toastmasters, if you don't take anything else away from this speech, just remember your words do matter. If you have the opportunity to be a mom, if you have a chance to talk to moms, if you have a chance to be a grandparent, talk to the mom of your grandchildren and just let them know everything you say to a child matters very much, and especially coming from a mother. So that's all I have to say on the topic. I hope you enjoyed. Happy Mother's Day and a napkin for Alex. Back to you, Thomas.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you.
Mr.
Okay. And I have something that occurred to me right away when you said when you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up? And I know my answer, bigger. That one, I achieved it. So I have to say that's quite an accomplishment. And those of you who, since last year about this time, we had our theme was Mother's Day, and then in June it was Father's Day. You might go back on YouTube and look up all those wonderful presentations that people made about their mothers or mothers, whoever they were speaking about, or fathers for the June month. So go back and look on those YouTube, and you will find some really excellent speakers on Mother's Day. One thing Al didn't mention, when you mentioned Cabrini, unless I missed it, did you say in this speech, because I'd heard it before, did you say she was the first American saint? Yes, pretty special honor for someone who wasn't supposed to live past 14. So I remember that from your speech on women's history. I have one more function to perform this month before we send you off to prepare. Make sure if you are interested in speaking at Soapbox Month in July, make sure you send me an email and I will attempt to get you into the program. And I have one more function that I didn't forget, and that is Bond, come on up. In our district, we have about 35 out of maybe 1,500 Toastmasters, about 35 people who have achieved their qualified speaker status. And that is for 20-minute presentations, which those of you who have been in contests, there is a world of difference between a 5 to 7 minute contest speech and being able to hold an audience's interest for 20 minutes. So congratulations, Bond. There you are. I would put it on, but I don't want to get you stuck. So I'll let you take care of that detail. And thank you all for being here. Oh, I got to shake that hand. Thank you all.